The top stories tonight in Y News. The Employers Confederation of the Philippines, or ECOP, appeals to the government to expand the capacity of workers allowed to physically report to work.
Vaccine czar and National Task Force Against COVID-19 Chief Implementer Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. says the Philippines has already defeated the coronavirus Delta variant.
Pharmally Executive Mohit Dargani criticized the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee's arrest order against them.
Senator Sherwin Gatchalian has banned National Transmission Corporation President Melvin Matibag from attending Senate hearings.
Hong Kong allows overseas trained doctors to practice in the Chinese-ruled city without taking a local licensing exam.
The Canadian government plans to extend the deadline of the residency program and considers expanding the eligibility to include refugee applicants. Good evening, Philippines and the world. We are now reporting live from Quezon City. Today is Friday, October 22, 2021. Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the Philippines and in other parts of the world. I'm Angelo Castro III.
We are also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts and our website, untvweb.com. I am William Theo. First in the news, the Employers Confederation of the Philippines, or ECOP, appeals to the government to just allow more employees to report for work. Nel Maribuhok will tell us why.
The COVID-19 pandemic has greatly affected businesses in the country. Sergio Ortiz Luis Jr., President of the Employers Confederation of the Philippines, or ECOP, believes that if more employees will go back to work, the faster the economy will recover.
So by this time, dapat talaga papasukin na nila yung demand ng mga workers. At wag na nilang ginagawa katwiran pa yung bakunado at hindi bakunado. Hindi ko alam kung bakit anong klase testing yung ginagawa nila. Wala namang ginagawang espesyal.
Meanwhile, the Labor Department stressed that people, including workers, cannot be forced to get vaccinated against COVID-19. Thus, employers cannot fire unvaccinated workers. Nevertheless, they may tell them not to report for work.
Pwedeng hilingin ng employer sa kanyang empleyado na habang hindi pa siya bakunado, pwede muna siyang hindi pumasok momentarily. Ibig sabihin yun, temporary lamang yun. Probably until such time na siya ay mabakunahan na or maging available ng bakuna at meron na siyang naiturok sa kanyang katawan. Kaklaro ko lang, hindi yun nangangahulugan na ine-terminate niya o pwede niyang i-terminate ang employment ng kanyang empleyado.
Dole also said employers have the discretion whether or not to hire unvaccinated applicants. But some lawmakers are opposing to this, calling it discriminatory. Nel Maribuhok, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Meanwhile, at least 332 establishments have been shut down by the Bureau of Internal Revenue due to various tax violations. In his report to the Department of Finance, BIR Deputy Commissioner Arnel Gubalya said they were also able to collect a total of 1.87 billion pesos unpaid taxes. Meanwhile, the BIR has rolled out its Internal Revenue Integrated System taxpayer registration system capable of capturing, monitoring, and reporting taxpayers' primary and secondary registration data. In other news, Vaccine Czar and National Task Force Against COVID-19 Chief Implementer Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. says the Philippines has defeated the Delta variant. Rosalie Cos will tell us why.
The daily COVID-19 infections has gone down to more than 4,000 cases in the past few days. According to Vaccine czar and National Task Force Against COVID-19 Chief Implementer Secretary Carlito Galvez, this is a clear indication that the Philippines has defeated a more contagious Delta variant. He made the statement during the arrival of less than 700,000 doses of AstraZeneca vaccines procured by the private sector at Terminal 3 of Ninoy Aquino International Airport this morning.
We made some drastic decision of really locking down early so that we will have a preparation for the coming of the Delta. So ngayon nakita natin, we were able to defeat Delta, and natutuwa kami na talaga ngayon we are focusing ourselves on the massive vaccination of our population.
Now, the Philippine government is intensifying its vaccination program. So far, around 93 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines have already arrived in the country. Secretary Galvez said the Vax to the Max campaign is part of the strategy of the government to prepare for any upcoming surge.
Sa ngayon, even though na nakita natin na bumababa na ang kaso natin, we are trying to prepare our defenses by massive vaccination, and also looking at possibilities of really reorganizing and refurbishing, reconstituting our hospitals and our healthcare workers. So ganun ang ginagawa natin ngayon. We are trying to hire more healthcare workers so that we can be prepared to prevent or even prepare for the incoming surge if there is ano. Pero ang ano namin, hanggang maaari, we are trying to prevent it to happen.
Rosa Licoz, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Pharmally Executive Mohit Dargani criticized the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee's arrest order against them. In a message sent to media, Dargani claims the committee failed to treat them fairly. This is despite their best effort to cooperate with the investigations. He also defended President Rodrigo Duterte by saying the latter has nothing to do with their business transactions. Committee Chairman Senator Richard Gordon meanwhile said Mr. Dargani, his sister, and all other resource persons invited to the Senate hearing have been treated fairly as the circumstances warranted. As Mr. Dargani continued to refuse to tell the truth, the committee was left with no choice but to use its rarely used power to cite him for contempt. He also challenged the Dargani siblings to come forward and submit all the documents the Senate is asking for. The Dargani sibling was ordered detained by the Senate, but they were nowhere to be found. Senator Sherwin Gatchalian has banned National Transmission Corporation President Melvin Matibag from attending hearings on the 2021 budget of the Department of Energy and its attached agencies and government corporations. In a letter to Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi, Gatchalian referred to the October 21 hearing in which Matibag was declared out of order and was removed after he called Senator Manny Pacquiao's questions politically motivated. The senator stressed any abusive, offensive, or otherwise improper speech or behavior will not be tolerated. He said until Attorney Matibag is able to behave in a professional manner, he is forced to prohibit his attendance to the remaining hearings. Over 4,000 minors in the National Capital Region have already received COVID-19 vaccines since the vaccination in Metro Manila started last week. Meanwhile, the second phase of pediatric vaccination in NCR has begun today. Janice Inhente has the details live. Janice, how did the phase 2 of the vaccination go?
Diego, there is no exact number yet of vaccinated 12 to 17 years old today, but the phase 2 of the inoculation went well according to the Department of Health. This covers all localities in the National Capital Region with 25 selected hospitals, including 2 vaccination venues.
Ang target natin dun sa mga may comorbidities here sa NCR is 144,000 plus. So once ma-reach yun, then we are going to roll out to dun sa ating mga without comorbidities.
Meanwhile, some local government units plans to look for more spacious vaccination sites for pediatric inoculation.
Maliit yung mga ospital dito sa Marikina para magamit na vaccination site. Pangalawa, nakita natin mas ligtas tong lugar nito dahil maluwag, malaki. Masusunod natin yung yung protocol, yung procedures na kailangan. Ang pinakamalapit na ospital dito ay halos 20 meters lamang ang layo. Nasa kabilang kalsada lamang.
Ito'y maging very successful dito sa hospital setting. Umaasa po tayo na ito'y may baba na natin sa ating vaccination sites sa San Juan. So if the DOH will eventually allow us to use our existing facilities.
Diego?
Thank you, Janice Inhente, reporting live. The Department of Health can apply for an emergency use authorization for the amendment of COVID-19 vaccines regimen. Aiko Miguel reports why.
Food and Drug Administration Director General Eric Domingo says the Department of Health is allowed to apply for emergency use authorization for the amendment of COVID-19 vaccines. This is so they can be used for the inoculation of third dose. FDA also said DOH can bid for heterologous vaccination against COVID-19. Heterologous vaccination is when a second dose regimen or third dose regimen is a different type of vaccine from the first dose of inoculated COVID-19 vaccine. Preliminary report in a Swedish study found that heterologous prime boost vaccination is effective against COVID-19.
Lalo na siguro kung ang gagamitin nila yung heterologous na vaccine. Ibig sabihin, magkaiba yung first 2 doses tas magkaiba yung pangatlong dose. Siyempre, very unlikely naman na may kumpanya na mag-a-apply ng ganoon. So yung mga mix and match na kung magkakaroon ng ganoong programa ang Department of Health, then Department of Health ang mag-a-apply ng EUA para.
The FDA further explains slight changes and dosing regimen changes should still be subject to approval through the application of another EUA. DG Dominguez said vaccine manufacturers or companies are obliged to make it clear in their EUA application whether their COVID-19 vaccines will be used as a third dose or booster dose. The DOH will craft guidelines with the guidance of All Experts Group or AEG on whether what COVID-19 vaccines can be used as third dose and to what population should this be administered. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Meanwhile, the Commission on Higher Education is looking into the resumption of face-to-face classes in tertiary level by next year. JP Nunez tells us why.
The Commission on Higher Education hopes to normalize the situation in the universities and colleges by January 2022. However, this is still under further study as vaccination rate of students are still low.
Ang tinatarget natin dyan ay matapos sana ang guidelines maybe November, December at titingnan natin kung anong kalagayan on the ground by January kung pwede na ito. Kasi mababa pa ang vaccination level ng mga estudyante. 27% pa lang. Hindi natin pwedeng isugal ang kalagayan ng mga estudyante at kalagayan ng kanilang mga pamilya kung mababa ang level ng vaccination.
Aside from the vaccination rate, some factors are also being considered before they can resume in-person classes.
Ang konseptong yan ay hindi lang low-risk area ang kailangan. Kailangan mataas ang vaccination rate ng mga estudyante, faculty at employees at mataas ang vaccination rate dun sa lugar. At kailangan kasama din sa usapan ang local government. Kasi alam mo, hindi pwedeng yung eskwelahan lang titignan mo. Dahil ang mga estudyante ay biyahe mula sa kanilang bahay hanggang eskwelahan. Sasakay ng public transportation yan.
Aside from the medical-related programs, other courses approved for limited face-to-face learning are engineering, hotel and restaurant management, and maritime. JP Nunez, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
And the Philippines today has detected 5,823 additional cases of COVID-19, pushing the nationwide caseload to 2,745,889. Based on the latest case bulletin issued by the Department of Health, the new infections brought the number of active cases to 66,838. Of the active cases, 79.1% are experiencing mild symptoms, 8.33% are moderate, 6.1% are asymptomatic, 4.6% are severe, and 1.9% are in critical condition. Moreover, the DOH reported an additional 4,748 fresh recoveries, raising the number of recovered cases to 2,637,531, or 96.1% of the total infections. On the other hand, the death toll also increased to 41,520, or 1.51% of the COVID-19 case count, after 283 more people died due to the viral illness. Meanwhile, the overall global COVID-19 caseload has topped to the 242,597,420, while the deaths have surged to 4,931,810, according to the Johns Hopkins University. The United States is the worst hit country with the world's highest number of cases and deaths at 45,301,092 and 733,218 respectively, according to the CSSE. In terms of infection, India follows in the second place with 34,143,236 cases and 453,042 deaths. In terms of deaths, Brazil comes second with 604,679 fatalities and 21,697,341 cases. Labor leader Sani Matula was named as the 12th and last member of the senatorial slate of Vice President Leni Robredo. In a statement, Robredo said he chose Matula for his clear track record of championing worker rights against big corporations. She went on to say that their roster may come from different backgrounds but are united in the future they want. The provincial governors have reluctantly adopted the COVID-19 alert level system in their territorial jurisdictions, but the League of Provinces of the Philippines asked for wider power in their decision related to alert level system. Asher Kadapan Jr. tells us why live. Yes, Asher, good evening. Go ahead.
Good evening, Will. The local government units outside Metro Manila explain they know well the appropriate measures to implement in their own jurisdictions. This as the League of Provinces of the Philippines appeal to allow them to decide what COVID-19 alert level to implement in every LGU.
So, ang hinihiling talaga rin ng mga local government units ay mabigyan sila ng mas malawak na powers or authority para po sila yung naglalagay ng mga measures or protocols na ugma doon sa kanilang territorial jurisdiction.
Despite adopting the alert level system in provinces, the governors continued their call to postpone the implementation of COVID-19 alert level system until the end of October. Governor Velasco explains that they need time to create executive orders for its imposition, identify the reasonable regulations provided in the guidelines set by the IATF, and cascade the information to the implementers.
Alam niyo po, yung mga iba't ibang mga lalawigan ay hindi naman po mga magaganda yung iba ng internet, yung mga sa kabundukan at sa ibang lugar ay hindi po naaabot nitong ating mga reports at mga bagong issuances.
Will, the League of Provinces of the Philippines has formally filed the appeal to the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases, but has yet to receive any response. Will?
Yes, thank you, Asher Kadapan Jr. for that live report.
And for the news abroad, Thailand has the highest death rates due to motorcycle accidents, according to a road safety group called Thai Road Assessment Program, or ThaiRAP. According to studies, holes in roads, curved lanes, and roadside barriers designed mostly for cars, motorcycles, and delivery trucks sharing the same lane, and objects on the roadside are some of the reasons behind these accidents. A global status report on road safety 2018 by the World Health Organization indicates that 22,000 Thai people died in road traffic accidents in 2016, and an average of 20,000 road deaths are recorded annually. It has also been found that majority of the casualties are between 15 to 29 years old, and 74% of the road traffic deaths in the country are riders of motorcycles. TAIRAP has sent a proposal to Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha to address motorcycle safety, such as bike performance standards, revising vehicle categories, and improving the license system. Singapore's task force submits 9 new recommendations to strategically address workplace concerns of both local and foreign workers. Annie Mancilia will tell us why live. Good evening, Annie.
Good evening, Kath. Singapore's professionals, managers, and executives have united to address the imbalance on Singapore's job opportunities. The PME task force identified that there are growing unemployment rates of locals, while there are increasing number of positions foreign workers are occupying. Essentially, the recommendations aim to grant less access to foreign workers so that a higher proportion of local PMEs can occupy positions. Patrick Tay of the National Trades Union Congress and the Singapore National Employers Federation, who also co-chairs the joint task force, stated that the application review process should include a point system when hiring foreign workers, which can also facilitate skill transfers to the locals. This is to push employers to effectively weigh the need to hire foreign workers, or instead look at leveling up their locals' PMEs to remain competent for their positions. On the other hand, the task force has confirmed that for positions that do require foreign expertise, the criteria and hiring system will be more flexible. At the moment, supplementary income relief is offered to those currently unemployed, while discussions around the issue are being resolved by the government. Kath?
Thank you, Annie Mancilia, reporting live. The Canadian government plans to extend the deadline of the residency program and considers expanding the eligibility to include refugee applicants. Ia De Vera details why live. Yes, Ia?
Yes, Kath, Canada is looking for more ways to enable temporary residents to transition to permanent residency, as migrant workers are deemed essential for the country's response to COVID-19 and to address the workforce challenges. The country considers extending the November 5 deadline of the current healthcare stream permanent residency program as over 50% of the spots are not yet filled. Furthermore, according to Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Minister Marco Mendicino, they are also reviewing on expanding the residency program to the refugee applicants who are working at the front line of COVID. Professor Jamie Chayan Liu of the University of Ottawa also said that it's essential for Canada to create more pathways to permanent residency to provide stability and protection to the migrant workers. Meanwhile, the province of Quebec and some Canadian businesses requested the federal government to allow more migrant workers to address workforce shortages. The government of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau also announced that it plans to make the process easier for more than 1 million temporary students, workers, and refugees. Moreover, Canada is trying to bring in 401,000 new permanent residents by the end of the year. Kath?
Thank you, Ia De Vera, for that live report. Hong Kong's legislature passed a law allowing overseas trained doctors to practice in the Chinese-ruled city without taking a local licensing exam. Jane Robles tells us why live. Jane?
Yes, Kath. The country is facing a serious shortage of doctors, according to Hong Kong Health Secretary Sophia Chan. Hong Kong's problem has been exacerbated not by the COVID-19 situation, but by medical professionals leaving the city. A dozen medical workers see the legislation as a first step in replacing local doctors from mainland China over concerns of health and safety standards. The council passed the bill with 39 votes and only one voted not in favor. but the new law allowing unlicensed physicians to work in Hong Kong hospitals received doubts from most of the medical professionals. They fear healthcare standards in one of Asia's top hospitals would be at stake. Meanwhile, government officials have dismissed their worries and plans to set up a special registration committee instead. The committee will determine at least of up to 100 medical universities around the world for professional recognition in Hong Kong. Kath?
Yes, Jane, why are the doctors in Hong Kong leaving?
The migration started following the implementation of the national security law last year, which most of the staffs in the medical field are against of. And in 2019, you may recall that dozens of healthcare workers had been arrested during the anti-China protest that caused serious injuries among protesters. Kath?
Thank you, Jane Robles, reporting live. And those are the reasons behind the news in other parts of the globe. I'm Kat Tumaraos, live from Bangkok, Thailand. Good evening.
And before we close, we will leave you with a word giving glory to God from the book of Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 10. It says, "Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might. For there is no work, nor device, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave whither thou goest."
And those are the reasons behind the news, October 22, 2021. Mangelo Castro III. As they unfold.
And because we need to know, we will always ask why. I am William Theo. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
So by this time, dapat talaga papasukin na nila yung deposit ng mga workers. At huwag na nilang ginagawa katwiran pa yung bakunado at hindi bakunado.
Ang hinihiling talaga rin ng mga local government units ay mabigyan sila ng mas malawak na powers or authority para po sila yung naglalagay ng mga measures or protocols na ugma doon sa kanilang territorial jurisdiction.
We were able to defeat Delta, and natutuwa kami na talaga ngayon we are focusing ourselves on the massive vaccination of our population.